Welcome to African Tales and Hearts, where stories of love, family, and destiny come alive. Nkechi's hand froze halfway through the door. Something smelled wrong. Not the smell of stew or fried plantain she was used to, this one was different. It was heavy, sour, and thick, like stew mixed with something that had died days ago. She hesitated, but curiosity won. She pushed the door open a little wider. What she saw made her chest tighten. The kitchen was a mess. Plates piled high with crusted sauce. Pots on the floor, black with soot and oil. Flies hovered above open bowls of soup. Water dripped from a leaking pipe into a muddy puddle on the floor. A woman in a faded wrapper was stirring a large pot. She held the wooden spoon with one hand and used the other to wipe her face. Then she continued stirring without washing her hand. Behind her, a younger girl scooped rice into plates with bare fingers. Nkechi's eyes darted around. Rats darted across the floor, bold and unbothered. Half-eaten food sat uncovered on the table beside raw meat. The smell hit her so hard she almost gagged. This couldn't be Mama Peace's kitchen. Not the same Mama Peace kitchen everyone in Nsukka called the cleanest in town. Not the same place she bragged about every day. The same food she'd eaten only yesterday. Her heart raced. She took one step back, then another. Her hand trembled as she reached for the wall to steady herself. "How many times have I eaten this?" she whispered. She turned and ran outside, gasping for air. The bright afternoon sunlight hit her eyes, and the world spun. She leaned against the wall, shaking her head, trying to process what she had just seen. The restaurant everyone trusted, the one that looked perfect from the front, was a filthy trap behind the door. But before that day, before she saw what really happened inside that kitchen, Nkechi was just another girl who hated cooking and loved to eat out. Everyone in the hostel knew Nkechi for one thing: she didn't cook. If there was a most likely to order food award, she would have won it every semester. Her pots were still shiny from the day her mother bought them. Her gas cylinder sat in the corner like decoration. She used to say, "Why stress myself when people are cooking better food outside?" Her roommate, Amaka, was the total opposite. Amaka loved cooking: rice, soup, stew, beans, she did it all. Every evening, the smell of her pepper stew filled the corridor. Girls from other rooms came pretending to borrow onions or salt just to inhale the aroma. Amaka used to warn her, "Nkechi, one day, your mouth will land you in trouble. You can't trust all these roadside restaurants." But Nkechi would just laugh. "I beg, leave talk. Mama Peace food too sweet. If you taste that jollof, you go forget your name." The restaurant stood at the junction near the campus gate, painted lemon green with bright red chairs and a banner that read, "Mama Peace Kitchen, clean food, clean hands." Everyone knew it. Traders, Okada riders, even lecturers ate there. The smell of stew floated through the street from morning till night. Mama Peace herself was a big, cheerful woman with round cheeks, gold earrings, and a laugh that could fill the room. She was always at the counter shouting, "Come oh! Food fresh today. No customer go regret." The first time Nkechi ate there, she was hooked. She had just finished class, tired and hungry, when the smell of fried plantain pulled her across the street. The food looked perfect, rich, colorful, steaming. One bite, and she was gone. From that day, Mama Peace Kitchen became her favorite spot. Every afternoon, she stopped there after lectures. Sometimes twice a day. She posted pictures on her WhatsApp status with captions like, "Only Mama Peace understands my stomach." Even her classmates followed her there. Some joked that she should be made customer of the month. Life was good, and food was better, until the first warning came. It was a hot afternoon. The restaurant was full, and the air smelled like stew and fried oil. Nkechi sat by the window, eating her usual jollof rice, beans, and goat meat. Everything tasted perfect until something strange brushed her tongue. She chewed once, then stopped. She spat the food out and froze. A long, black strand of hair hung from her spoon. She blinked twice. "What's this?" she murmured, staring at it. She called the waitress. "Excuse me. Come and see what's inside my food." The girl leaned over, frowned slightly, and said, "Maybe from broom, ma. We sweep." Nkechi frowned. "This is not broom hair. This is weave." Mama Peace overheard the conversation and came over, laughing loudly. "Ah, my daughter, don't vex. Maybe small mistake. You know, when place busy, if it happen. I go give you extra meat next time." The customers around laughed. One man said, "Hair day add flavor." Nkechi forced a smile, but she didn't finish the food. She paid quietly and left. That evening, she told Amaka. Amaka dropped her spoon. "You see? I told you." "It's not that deep," Nkechi replied, shrugging. "Even in hotels, hair can fall inside food." Amaka shook her head. "You're defending nonsense." 3 days later, Nkechi woke up with stomach cramps. By afternoon, she was vomiting and too weak to stand. Amaka rushed her to a nearby chemist. The pharmacist took one look at her and said, "This one don chop walla. Now food poison be this." He gave her bitter medicine and warned, "Stop eating outside. You don't know what those people use to cook." She nodded weakly. For 2 days, she stayed in bed. She promised herself she would stop buying food. But as soon as she recovered, hunger won again. By the 3rd day, she was back at Mama Peace's kitchen. When the woman saw her, she laughed loudly. "Ah, my fine customer don recover. I know say you go come back." Nkechi smiled shyly and sat down. The food looked and smelled perfect. She convinced herself the sickness came from something else, maybe bad water. She ate, paid, and left. Days passed. Weeks too. She kept eating there, pretending everything was fine. But deep down, she knew something didn't feel right. Sometimes the rice had a strange smell. Sometimes the meat tasted odd. Once, she saw a rat run behind the counter, but she told herself maybe she was imagining things. "Every place has small dirt," she whispered to herself. She ignored the signs. Until one afternoon, she decided she wanted to see the kitchen for herself. And what she found behind that swinging door was worse than anything she could have imagined. Nkechi couldn't sleep that night. The image of that kitchen wouldn't leave her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flies landing on food, rats running across the floor, that woman stirring soup with the same hand she wiped her sweat with. Her stomach turned at the memory. The next morning, she told Amaka everything. Amaka's eyes widened. "You went inside? I told you something was wrong with that place." Nkechi sat on the bed, still shaken. "Amaka, it was bad. The kitchen was filthy. They don't even cover the food. They wash meat with dirty water." Amaka sighed. "So now you believe me?" Nkechi nodded. "I wish I didn't. I wish I never saw it." But deep down, she knew she couldn't keep quiet. People were still eating there, her classmates, her neighbors, the same hostile girls who always followed her. By evening, she made up her mind. "Tomorrow, I'll go back. I'll make sure I wasn't imagining things." Amaka looked up from her stove. "You want to go back there again?" "Yes," Nkechi said firmly. "I need to be sure." The next afternoon, they went together. They pretended to be passing by but stopped beside the small alley that ran behind the restaurant. The smell was worse now, sour stew and smoke. Through a gap in the wooden fence, they saw everything clearly. 2 girls were scraping leftover food from dirty plates into a big bowl. Rice, bones, half-eaten meat, all of it mixed together. Then one of them poured stew on top and stirred. Amaka gasped softly. "Wait, they're reheating leftovers?" Nkechi nodded, eyes wide. "That's what made me sick. I know it." They stayed hidden, watching in horror. A small boy walked in carrying another basin filled with used plates. He poured the leftover food into the same bowl. Then he picked up a spoon from the floor, rinsed it in brown water, and handed it to the cook. Nkechi's stomach clenched. She pulled Amaka's hand. Let's go. They walked away quickly, their hearts pounding. That night, they couldn't eat. Amaka sat quietly while Nkechi stared at her untouched food. What are you going to do? Amaka asked. I don't know, Nkechi whispered. But people need to know. I can't let others fall sick like I did. The next morning, the story started spreading, quietly at first. Nkechi told 2 friends from her department. By the afternoon, half the class had heard. By evening, it was all over campus. Did you hear about Mama P's kitchen? They say they recook people's leftovers. Someone saw rats in the soup pot. The rumors moved faster than Harmattan fire. At first, Mama Peace laughed it off. She stood outside her restaurant shouting, lies. All lies. People don't want me to succeed. She even offered discounts to lure back customers. But people had seen enough. Everywhere Nkechi went, students whispered about it. Some said a girl caught them washing plates with gutter water. Others claimed they saw worms in the rice. By Thursday, only a few customers remained. By Friday, the chairs were empty. Mama Peace stopped laughing. That weekend, things exploded. A group of students who lived nearby decided to confirm the story for themselves. They went behind the restaurant like Nkechi did, but this time, they filmed everything on their phones. The video showed the dirty kitchen, the leftover food, the flies, everything. Within hours, it was everywhere. On WhatsApp, the caption read, "This is the clean restaurant you've been eating from." On Facebook, "Nsukka's popular Mama Peace kitchen, see what happens behind the counter." The comments came fast. "I used to eat there, oh. No wonder my stomach was always paining me. I'm finished." By Sunday, the once busy restaurant was silent. The smell of stew still hung in the air, but nobody came. The chairs gathered dust. The signboard that once read "Clean Food, Clean Hands" was now tilted, one corner broken. When Nkechi passed by, Mama Peace was sitting alone, staring into space. Her gold tooth no longer shone. The laughter that once filled the air was gone. Nkechi stopped for a moment. She felt something between anger and pity. But then she remembered the hair in her food, the sickness, the filth. She turned and walked away. Back at the hostel, Amaka said, "You see how people pretend? All this time, she was feeding us dirt." Nkechi nodded. "I can't believe I defended her. What will you do now?" Nkechi looked around the room. "I'll learn to cook." Amaka smiled. Finally. That evening, she handed Nkechi a small pot. "Start with rice. If you burn it, we'll eat the good part." They both laughed. But when Nkechi put the pot on the stove, her hands trembled. It wasn't just about cooking, it was about starting over. The rice came out half-burnt, but she didn't care. For the first time, she ate something she made herself, and it tasted like freedom. That night, she made a quiet promise. No more shortcuts. No more trusting what looks clean. Because sometimes, what looks safe on the outside hides the dirtiest truth inside. Learning to cook wasn't easy for Nkechi. The first time she boiled rice, it burned so badly the smell filled the whole hostel. Amaka laughed until she cried. "The fire is too high," she shouted. "You're trying to roast the pot, not cook the food." Nkechi smiled, embarrassed but determined. She wasn't doing this to prove anything. She was doing it because she never wanted to depend on anyone's kitchen again. Every evening after class, she practiced. Sometimes the stew was watery, sometimes salty. Sometimes the beans refused to soften no matter how long she waited. But each time, it got a little better. Soon, the corridor began to smell like her food instead of Amaka's. Girls started knocking on their door. "Nkechi, you cooked again? A beg, let me just taste small." She would laugh and hand them a spoon. It felt good, clean, simple, safe. One weekend, they made more food than they could finish. Amaka said, "Let's share it with those boys in room 7. They're always broke." They packed the rice and stew into containers and took it over. The boys ate in silence, then licked their spoons clean. "Who cooked this?" one asked. Amaka pointed at Nkechi. "Our new chef." The boys laughed. "You? The same Nkechi that used to eat outside every day?" "People can change," she said proudly. The next day, the same boys came back. "Abeg, do you have more of that rice?" That's how it started. They began cooking small extra portions and selling to a few people. The name came naturally, Clean Pot Jollof. It wasn't fancy, but it fit. Their rule was simple. No reused oil. No dirty water. No shortcuts. If the pot wasn't clean enough to eat from, they didn't cook in it. At first, business was slow. Then word spread. Students started knocking. "Abeg, are you the Clean Pot girls? I want one plate." Every evening, laughter and chatter filled their room. Amaka handled money. Nkechi handled the fire. They moved like a team. Before long, their food became famous. Even lecturers were ordering. One woman from the business department said, "I've never eaten hostel food that tastes this good. Keep it up." Months passed. The signboard of Mama Peace Kitchen still hung at the old junction, faded and crooked. The building was empty. Grass grew near the walls, and the air smelled like dust. One afternoon, Nkechi walked past it on her way to the market. For a moment, she stopped. She remembered the laughter, the smell of stew, the taste of goat meat, and the sickness that followed. A small wind blew through the empty space, carrying the faint scent of rust and regret. She shook her head and walked on. Not out of pride, but peace. She had finally learned what she was meant to learn. That semester, Clean Pot Jollof exploded. They bought a bigger stove, more plates, and even hired a first-year student to help. At night, the girls counted their profits, laughing like two sisters who had cracked a secret code. One evening, Amaka looked at her and said, "Do you realize all this started because of that hair you found in your food?" Nkechi laughed softly. "Best mistake of my life." By the end of the year, people on campus called her Chef N. She even started giving cooking lessons on weekends. When new students moved into the hostel, they came to her for advice. "Please, Auntie Nkechi, how do you make jollof come out red like that?" She smiled every time she heard it. One Saturday afternoon, she received an unexpected message on her phone. It was from a number she didn't recognize. "Good day, my daughter. This is Mama Peace. I heard what you're doing. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Take care of yourself." Nkechi read the message twice. She didn't reply. Not because she was angry, but because she didn't know what to say. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you," and put the phone away. The following week, Clean Pot Jollof catered its first big event, a student union party. The line stretched down the hall. People laughed, danced, and praised the food. When the event ended, one of the organizers said, "You girls should open a real restaurant after school." Amaka grinned. "Tell her that." Nkechi smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "Maybe one day. But if I ever open one, the kitchen will be the cleanest place in town." That night, after everyone left, she sat on her bed staring at the small pot that had started it all. It wasn't shiny anymore, but it was hers. Her journey. Her reminder. She thought about everything she'd learned, not from lectures, but from life itself. Trust can be dangerous. Clean can be an illusion. And sometimes, pain is the best teacher. She turned off the light and smiled. She was no longer the girl who depended on someone else's kitchen. She was the girl who built her own. And that's how Nkechi learned her lesson, the hard way. Because in life, not everything that shines is clean, and sometimes, the mess we run from becomes the lesson we need. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more African stories that touch the heart. Only on African Tales and Hearts, where every story carries a piece of home.